So thank you for being here in such big numbers. Maciek, who's a good friend of mine, asked us to talk about a very important part of leadership and entrepreneurship. We're not academics. We're I guess, practicing entrepreneurs, and we want to share our experiences. They're going to be pretty vulnerable and very honest, and I hope you appreciate that, because what we're going to talk about today is about a very important skill that you will have to learn over time, and you'll soon quickly realize that it's how important it is, and it's the fine art of eating glass. And we already got a very nice introduction, but just to put it into our own words and our own narrative, let us maybe tell you a bit about ourselves, how we see our careers.
Yeah, so I'm Seth Bannon, as was mentioned, the founder and CEO of a startup based out of New York called Amicus. And my sort of entrepreneurial story started when I was quite young. When I was 14, I started volunteering for nonprofits and political campaigns. A few years earlier, my mother, who was sort of the great activist hero in my life because she would do things that actually are quite small but seemed like a big deal at the time, became disabled. So she, when I was younger, would do things like if she saw someone cutting in line at the supermarket, she'd always go over and say, "Excuse me, this person was in front of you," which when you're 10 is like, wow, my mom's a crime-fighting superhero. Or if she thought a law was unjust, she would get our neighbors together to write letters to our local congresswoman. And then when I was 12, we were living in a house that was powered by propane gas, and there was a spark and a leak and an explosion. And she was in the house at the time and became permanently disabled. And so she would get really frustrated because she would see these injustices, but wouldn't necessarily know what to do about them anymore. So I started doing those things for her. I'd say, "Hey, Ma, look, I wrote Congressman DeLaura." Or if I ever stopped someone from cutting in line, I'd run right home and tell my mom about it. And then when I was 14, I realized that there were a lot of people who were in a similar position to my mother, who, because they were faced with either a disability or because they were kids or because they came from a certain socioeconomic background, just didn't know how to advocate for themselves. And I decided that I wanted to advocate for them too. So that's how I got into the nonprofit world. In the political world, I worked for President Obama on his first election campaign. And essentially from the beginning, I was really frustrated with the technology in the space. Didn't understand why it was 10 years behind, the video games I was playing. And so after much complaining, I finally decided to do something about it myself and founded Amicus, which is a company that builds tools for political campaigns and for nonprofits. And essentially from the beginning, had gotten some decent amount of traction. We built the tool, we got our first customers, we were able to raise $600,000 from some great venture capitalists and angel investors. We applied to this incubator called Combinator, which is a really great accelerator in Silicon Valley, and got in. After Y Combinator, we raised $3.2 million from some more great investors. We moved to New York City. We got a really beautiful Soho loft. Really, everything was going quite nicely. CNN sent camera crews to cover our startup. National News, the United States, sent camera crews. I was included in the Forbes list. And one of the coolest things is The Economist, which I was kind of a nerd when I was younger, which was always one of my favorite publications, covered Amicus. And so it was just really, really cool. I got invited to speak at conferences, spoke at South by Southwest in Austin, in DC, in New York, in Vienna, in Krakow, in some places more exotic. And my friends and family sort of started to understand what I was doing. And it's all really cool. And that's just part of the story, but I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, so for some of you who are local here might know me from the local tech scene. I'm raised and born in Krakow, have spent most of my life here. Started my first company, Applicake, here when I was still, I think, in my second year at my university. And that was a software development shop that grew from 4 people to over 30 people over the course of a few years. And out of that company, me and my partners launched different projects and companies. So we did really big developer events that, like European level developer events, for the Ruby on Rails language, events for mobile technologies. I co-founded the Polish startup community. It's very active in Krakow. There's a chapter in Poznań right now. We're starting something in Warsaw. So I found myself kind of very luckily and serendipitously in that space of technology. I was actually the CEO of a company, so I found myself a new discovered leader, and it was an amazing experience. One day I was lucky enough, and I guess me and my co-founders were smart and hardworking enough to start this other company called Base, which has up to today raised over $22 million in funding. We have a very big development team here in Krakow. We have an office in Silicon Valley in Palo Alto. It's an enterprise. Software company. I went to Silicon Valley for a few months, started this company called Predictive, recently moved to New York, became a COO and operations officer at another company. So the career is spread maybe across 9 years, so I started pretty early. I'm also a partner at the early stage venture capital funds, and right now invest in technology companies, and I still think it's just the beginning of my story. And I spoke at different events. I was put on the Frost magazine list of the Poland's future richest, for whatever that means. Was named one of the top women in tech in Europe, got invited to different events, and so it's all very glamorous, and it sounds great. And I lost the clicker. So I saw my face at one of the conference, like invitation-only founder conference. I got my picture taken by this famous photographer, Kevin Abush, who takes pictures of celebrities essentially. And then I saw my face put on the NASDAQ screen on the Times Square. So that was a nice picture to send to my parents. Like, hey, it's not, it was worth to drop out of college.
And I had a reporter, come and take some photographs, and then they ended up doing a full-page spread in Inc. magazine, which is one of the big business publications in the States, which is flattering and a little embarrassing. But the reason we talk about this is because this is only one side of the entrepreneurial story. And it's the side you sort of hear most about if you read about startups in the press, or if you follow blogs, or if you talk to founders. But there's a whole nother side to it. And it's a side that's not nearly talked about as much. And it's a much darker side. And the truth is that entrepreneurship is incredibly difficult and incredibly stressful. This is a quote from Elon Musk, who founded PayPal and founded Tesla and founded SpaceX. He said, starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. And for those of you that don't know, an abyss is essentially a deep, endless, dark hole. So not a very bright picture. Yeah. And we have found that this description is actually pretty apt.
It's just want to say, because many of you are thinking of you as leaders in nonprofits and different organizations, it's exactly the same. We're just speaking because this is our entrepreneurial experience. But
yeah. So if you remember this story, this really great, amazing journey, there's a lot more going on that you wouldn't know about looking at it from the outside. So a year ago, I was walking to a team meeting where I was going to announce that we were going to have to lay off almost the entire company because we were unexpectedly running out of money. On the way to the meeting, our CTO turned to me and told me that he was going to resign. And right after that, my co-founder, who was a friend of mine for 11 years, told me that he was resigning too. I hadn't slept much the night before, and I could barely process the news. This was rock bottom. But this wasn't uncommon. It's so common that there's actually an acronym for it, WIFIO, which stands for We're Fucked, It's Over. There's a really prominent venture capitalist in Silicon Valley named Mark Andreessen, and he estimated that successful companies go from anywhere between 2 to 16 WIFIOs, right? So a really great company, at least twice, has moments where they throw up their hands and they go, my God, it's over, this is terrible, we've completely failed. And that's like the best case scenario. And these moments are incredibly stressful. And I can tell you from personal experience that they are, and we also had the fortune of going through Y Combinator, which is the accelerator we mentioned, and it's a really cool experience because they have these things called Tuesday dinners, which are strictly off-the-record times where founders of prominent companies can come in and talk about their experience. So you can hear from the founder of Facebook, of Dropbox, of Airbnb, of Instagram. And what you learn from these off-the-record discussions is that even startups that look like rocket ships are all just roller coasters. Every single one of these startups had these wild ups and then wild downs. It's a really, really common story. And I know it's a story that Ela's experienced as well.
Yeah, so my part of the story that I think was one of my most shaping experience as an entrepreneur, and right now I'm very happy I experienced it, was that company that I told you that I started out of Applicake with my co-founders, and we were launching a few projects. You could just tell by the amount of logos on that site, and one of them was predictive. So we had this idea that one day all the content online should be meta tagged for attribution. So that sounds complicated, but essentially we wanted a world where everyone would be visible behind the fruits of their work, whether it's a programmer, a copywriter, makeup artist in a video. Like, you can actually see who did what online, and you can contact those people and have a really transparent work marketplace. So that was the idea, and I really thought it would be something that would be a huge opportunity, and also something that I would really want to see in the world. So I learned about this program, Y Combinator, and I know it's like the best startup school in the Valley, and we had a lot of relevant experience, and I had a hunch that we could get in. And we got in, and we were the first company to ever get in there. It was a very big deal. It was a success on its own to get to such a prestigious program and be able to move to Silicon Valley, get some funding, and be really a part of the tech community we're at its heart. But I remember just before I went there, my mentor, who's an entrepreneur coach and a startup investor in New York, he told me, I'm not sure about that program because you're a marathon runner and accelerators are for sprinters. And I was like, no, I'll be fine. Jerry, I've done that before. I've managed people. I'm strong. I can do it. And we ended up moving to Silicon Valley. It all happens very quickly. You learn that you got in. You get a promise of some initial funding. You essentially tell your family you're going to disappear for a few months. You're probably not even going to, reply to calls or emails, and you have to take care of the immigrations, finding an apartment, finding a car, setting up a Delaware company. So everything happens really quickly, and you have just 3 months. And very quickly, I realized that my style of working that made me productive for the previous 5 years, it's not working in that environment. We're not growing fast enough. There's a lot of pressure. There are 80 companies in the program. Everybody is speeding up to what is called a demo day, where you're presenting your ideas to investors. And I was a CEO of a company, and I felt the pressure is too much. I felt anxiety. I wasn't enjoying it for the first time of my life because I used to treat all of and I still do, my professional experiences as those play adventures when I just go to something and I really like it. But this, for the first time, it felt like I have a job and I'm like put in some circumstances that I didn't define by myself, and it doesn't feel right. So I started noticing that I'm snapping on my team. I'm not being as nice as I used to. I'm pushing them too hard, and when you push people too hard, they're not being productive anyway. So I started seeing that I'm not a great leader. Those circumstances are actually making me a shitty person. So so it was a very complex situation where I knew something is wrong, and I knew I don't want to continue that. We're not growing fast enough. We're among companies that are going to raise millions and millions of dollars, and I feel like I'm in the middle of a box, and all I want to do is get out. So I made and on top of that, we actually had investors interested, and Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz, which is a very famous investment firm, we had a conversation, and he told me, this is exactly what we're looking for. We would like you to invest. And I found myself in the situation of, I don't like it. I would rather be somewhere else. All I want to do is run away. We have people potentially investing in the companies, which means then we have to continue doing that. So I told my team, listen, we're just going to stop. We're not going to do that because it doesn't feel right. So we might rethink it in Poland and then go back after 2 or 3 months. I just don't like the fact that we're doing something just because there is some crazy momentum that's pushing us. And that was really hard because after you push people very hard for a few months, suddenly to tell them, just forget about it, like, your hard efforts, I appreciate them, but we're not going to do that. Everybody was really disappointed. It was the most challenging moment for me. But what I noticed is that people actually had a chance to breathe out. We all went for a hike, and they said, this seems like you again. So that seems like we're doing the right thing. So we came back to Poland. We're running some big developer events. So I had things to work on. And I had another company, obviously, to go back to being a CEO of. And I just realized I put too much on my shoulders, and it doesn't scale. There is a limit to a person's productivity, even if you can be super productive. And I'm telling that it's because the emotional cost of entrepreneurship is very real, and the more you talk about it with your entrepreneur friends, with your even just professional colleagues and people running NGOs, people being in different corporate levels of career, is that they all struggle. They struggle for many reasons.
Yeah.
So first of all, even deciding, you seem to be, all of you, it's a youth conference, you're going to decide what you want to do in life, and you're not going to decide it quite possibly once and forever. You're going to redecide what you're going to do in life many times. And making that decision is really hard because it's impossible to make a data-driven decision on that because you don't have enough data. You don't know the alternative universes of what would become if you did this. So you have to make a decision and go with it. But quite often, the really brave decisions are unpopular, and your peers are not making them. Your family is not going to immediately support them. There's going to be some risk involved. So that adds up to the pressure.
And so if you do decide to embark on an entrepreneurial journey, but even if you don't and you want to be in a leadership role in some organization, leadership is incredibly stressful. When you lead, you quickly learn that you're no longer just responsible for your own well-being in life and your own success, but the well-being and success of everyone that you lead. So in order to build a great organization, you have to find people who are a good fit for that organization and who can help that organization succeed. And then you have to convince them to leave what they're doing and join you. And they're often at a very stable job that they might not hate. They might have financial security. They might be on a path for promotion. And you're convincing them, no, you've got to throw all that away to join this crazy adventure. And this is a really big burden, and it's a really big psychic burden. And once you hire them, you're then responsible for making sure that they succeed at your organization. You have to help them grow. You have to mentor them. You have to make sure that they're motivated. And these are all really difficult things. And so even in the best of times, leadership is difficult and stressful. But sometimes things aren't great. Firing someone when they're not doing their job is an incredibly difficult thing to do. But having to let people go because you've messed up, which often happens, can sometimes just be unbearable.
So running an organization or putting yourself in a position of a leader, you'll quickly realize that grand vision you had and that initial crazy thought, because that's often how you become a leader, that something is doable, clashes with the reality. And you're going to have to learn how to do very small steps. And you're going to have to accept that you're going to see some really unexpected problems that are going to be bigger than you expected them to be, and you're going to have to deal with that on a daily basis. So there's going to be financial instability, team problems, not just internal team dynamics, which you suddenly become apparent to your team, and you have to learn how to manage people. You have to learn how to communicate and learn what the cores of the problems are. You're going to have to observe the competitors, and the list goes on. And there's going to be many things and many arrows hitting you at the same time, and this is why it's really important to learn to cope and succeed under such circumstances.
And in especially the role of entrepreneurship, the unknowns in any situation greatly outweigh the knowns, right? So you don't know if people are going to want what you're building. You don't know how much they're going to pay for it. You don't know how many people will pay for it. You don't know if people pay for it, you can convince investors to give you money. You don't know if you can convince the best engineers to join you. There's just a whole bunch of unknowns, and that kind of uncertainty can be incredibly stressful.
One additional thing that was particularly challenging for me as a leader and as an entrepreneur was that there's always something to do. So when you're at school, you have your schedule, you have your classes, you have your exams, you have maybe crazy amount of exams, but then you often have time off, and there is this rhythm that we're taught to thrive in, and then suddenly when you're out of the school environment, you realize that if you're not disciplined about the rhythm you're giving yourself, you're going to burn out very quickly, because there is always something to do. You can always do something better. You can always fix something. You can always, nobody's going to tell you, okay, now is the exam session, and now you have time off, because all of your friends are going to be going on vacation. Also, the rhythms of you and your friends are going to not be this in sync, so quite often you have to be just very disciplined about the time off. You're going to sacrifice your personal time. You're going to say no to, oh no, sorry, I cannot join for that dinner because I have plans, or I cannot go to that picnic. I cannot, you miss your friend's birthday party for the first time, and suddenly you realize people maybe will not invite you to things as often anymore, and it just can make you really more alienated, and even more so in your own world of your own problems and your own dreams that you're trying to realize. An often thing that happens to entrepreneurs, and leaders, you're going to question whether you're a failure, whether you just got lucky, whether you're the right person for the job, whether somebody else should be doing your job, and whether everybody knows that it's actually somebody else who should be there. People often have a very strong imposter syndrome. You're thinking, oh, everybody should realize that, that I'm not the right person for the job. So even if you succeed, you will start thinking that, no, I just succeeded because of other people, and it's very hard. Leadership is psychologically very hard, and the more you learn to manage your psychology.
Also, there's this interesting phenomenon so I have a friend who used to work at Bridgewater, which is one of the biggest hedge funds in the world, and they have a saying there, 99% right is 100% wrong. Right? So you've just got to know the answer to everything, because that 1% of uncertainty could cost the firm $100 million. Well, in entrepreneurship, 20% right is pretty good, right? If you're only failing 4 times as many times as you're succeeding, then you've got a really nice track record. But those failures are constant, and they can really wear on you. And if you don't remain and sort of maintain a healthy perspective, they can lead to questions like this. And
they can lead to anxiety, and they can lead to the constant state of thinking, oh, there's something I should be doing, or it's just the state of being locked up in your head and thinking that there's, the constant pressure, there's questioning, there's trying to be perfect when you cannot be, and anxiety is very common to entrepreneurs, and it's okay sometimes to have minor anxiety, but what's really dangerous that it can lead to some more serious problems.
Yeah, so anxiety and constant stress can often lead to depression, and it's important for those of you that don't know that depression is a very real thing. So it's actually a neurochemical state that you can detect through an fMRI. This isn't some sort of made-up phenomenon, and it's important to recognize when you or someone that you know is falling into it, which is a very real possibility if you're taking up important tasks, because typically when you do that, it leads to a lot of stress, which can lead to anxiety, which can lead to this. So, signs of depression include things like, a lot of anxiety. It includes a constant feeling of fatigue. It involves a sort of feeling of hopelessness, where no matter what happens, it's all going to turn out poor anyway. You can often feel angry with people. Have you ever had those days where you just don't want to get out of bed? You're just oh, I don't want to get. If that extends for more than a day or two, it's a pretty good sign. And the reason that it's really important that you look for the signs both in yourself and others is because depression is beatable. So with support and with a little bit of effort, it's entirely possible to overcome it. But sometimes people are so focused on what they're doing that they ignore the signs, they don't try and get help, and it can lead to some much more serious problems. So another sign of depression is obviously suicidal thoughts. And unfortunately, this is a real problem in the world of entrepreneurship. In the last years, there have been a few prominent suicides, including someone that I was quite friendly with. And so, I just want to drive home that you can go and Google, depression, just look at the signs, and then just keep an eye out, because all the people in this room are going to be highly motivated, high-achieving people, and unfortunately, it's this type of group that depression hits the worst.
Yeah, so it's gotten pretty heavy, but it's really important to talk about it. Like, start from, yes, there's this glamorous world of being in the newspapers and leading people and doing great things, but if there's only one thing you're going to remember from this, you have to equip yourself with the tools, and we're going to talk about the tools soon. So
yeah, it's not all misery here. We're gonna tell you how to overcome all this crap.
Really successful people very often are very disciplined about managing their psychology. So just to add it, there's this famous tech investor, Brad Feld, who started talking openly about his episodes in depression, and turns out most entrepreneurs and leaders at some point will have that problem. So if you Google like entrepreneurial or leader depression, it's a thing, and I think it's our responsibility to talk about it. So there's my coach and a really good friend, Jerry Colonna, who has this website, Reboot.io, for people who started something but burned out and then or need to make a big life shift or need to start a new company. It's like rebooting not just your computer, but rebooting yourself sometimes when you feel not everything is going great. So we talk a lot about the problems, and then in terms of the skills that can be useful.
So now we're going to talk about the solutions. So the first step is to understand who the enemy is here. This bastard is the enemy. This guy is called cortisol. It's a stress hormone. And it's released whenever the body is under stress. And it does a lot of things, including increases the amount of sugar in blood. It increases blood pressure. It does basically a bunch of things that would be super valuable if you were trying to run away from a charging bear, which is why it exists. But in today's modern world, it just has destructive capacity. So if you build up enough cortisol, there's actually a plaque that starts to build in your brain. And this plaque is really nasty. It actually kills gray matter connection, so sort of connections between neurons. It kills creativity. It leads to anxiety. It makes depression more likely. It reduces intelligence. These are all things that have been shown to happen in the lab. So this guy is the enemy. So the next step after knowing who we're fighting is knowing how to beat that little bastard. So now we're going to give you some practical advices for actually excelling through stress. And so it's sort of a basic of public speaking that you're supposed to try and please your audience. So try and make them happy. So here's my attempt. If you want to succeed in life, you should sleep more, you should go on vacation, you should dance till you drop, and you should get a lot of massages. That's pretty sweet, right? So this isn't just me trying to be a good public speaker. This is actually science. And so I'm going to walk you through a few recent studies that show how all of these things can help you excel through stressful situations. Study number one. It's been shown over and over again that sleeping makes you smarter. If you sleep more, you will literally be more intelligent. So what's happening is when we sleep, the brain replays the problems of the day and actually helps us solve those problems. So throughout the history of mathematics, a lot of the most important discoveries in the field happened when someone woke up and they said, aha. And that's not an old wives' tale. It's actually because your brain is working out problems as you sleep. So they've done tests where they have people try and learn a certain pattern of keystrokes on a keyboard, and they have them train all day. Then they let one group sleep for 9 hours, they let one group sleep for 8 hours, one for 7, then they have them do it again. And tremendous improvement among the people who sleep more. So it actually helps you be smarter. It also helps you be more creative. So they've given people similar tasks that don't just involve sort of rote mechanisms, but involve some sort of creative output, creative problem solving, like mathematics, and they find that people who sleep more are more creative. Believe it or not, there's a growing body of research that shows that going on vacation makes you a healthier, smarter person. And so this is one of those things where people say, oh, I can't go on vacation, I can't take time off, I gotta be productive, I gotta get this stuff done. But to me, that's a lot like saying, you know, I can't eat today, I can't eat tomorrow, I gotta get this stuff done, I just gotta keep working, right? If you did that, eventually you would literally just collapse on the floor and you wouldn't be able to work anymore. This is similar. It's been shown that just by taking some time off, going on vacation, stop thinking about work, you increase your productivity while you're actually working. So if you want to do nothing but be super productive and successful, you should make some time out, take some time off yourself. This is a really cool one. This is from the University of Frankfurt Psychology Department, which actually showed that dancing reduces cortisol levels in the brain in a pretty significant way. So if you guys are feeling really stressed, just call up some of your friends, go to a club, do whatever, go dance.
I just wanted to add something. Right after I came back, I took one sabbatical in my life. Sabbatical is an extended leave. After I had to close the company after the most stressful moment, I moved to New York and signed up for a 4-month contemporary dance program. And I just danced every day with really like professional dancers, way better than me, trying to survive on like somewhere in the back of the room, but it really helps.
There you go, personal example. This is a study from the International Journal of Neuroscience, which shows that frequent massages also help keep down one's cortisol levels. So if you want to do nothing else, just schedule a massage for yourself every other week, and you will be helping your brain perform better. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, there's a lot of research. Like there's a growing recognition for yoga and meditation and mindfulness meditation among the leaders and entrepreneurs community, if you read interviews with successful entrepreneurs. So many Eastern philosophy and Eastern medicine techniques are only being appreciated now when there's actual hard data from MRIs, from brain scans, and how actually cortisol levels go down and how some neural pathways are strengthened. And it sounds weird. It sounds like it sounds weird that, you know, sitting on the floor and using one of the meditation app will help you, but that's what great leaders do. You're going to go crazy if you're running a big organization or a big project if you don't do those things. And meditation is something that many people, especially it's super popular in Silicon Valley for whatever it says, might be just a fad, but it really helps people to zone out and just like not be bombarded with constant impulses and actually come up with smarter solutions and be happier, more inspiring, and more efficient leader.
This was a really cool one to see. And just so you guys know, there's a specific type of meditation called mindfulness meditation, and almost all the scientific research has been done on that specific type of meditation. So if you want to learn more about it, you can Google it.
So another way to get perspective, I'm sure right now you're pretty immersed in, I'm guessing, in your academic and social circles, but it's super important that as you continue doing your very important life-changing and world-changing projects, you step out to get perspective. So it's not just about your sleep, your meditation, your exercise, it's also about going physically away from the problem, not from the problem, but from what you're doing, and just sometimes taking a different perspective look of, is it really what I should be doing? Is that solution the best, or am I doing it because I had this idea and right now I'm just stuck with the solution? Talk to your friends, not just about what you're doing, but in general, just stay connected to your support network. Once in a while, it might be good to somebody professional to just share them, hey, this is what I'm struggling with this week and it's hard. Maybe you can tell me how I can be a better leader. And many, I mentioned Jerry, who's a professional coach for many, many famous CEOs, and people running with big teams and big organizations often have a coach or therapist who they consult to and who's helping them get better at that job.
So I'm worried that some of the more perceptive of you in the audience might notice this, but it's kind of a mistake. After perspective, this really should have been 4 Ps. Didn't see the trend. But anyway, so now there are 3 Ps that I want to talk about: purpose, passion, and Paul Graham. So I'll do these in reverse order. So Paul Graham, for those of you that don't know, is the founder of Y Combinator. And this guy is, if there's an oracle of startups, this is the guy. You can go to paulgraham.com/essays, read his essays. If you want to start a company, it's probably the best way you could spend your time if you want to learn about entrepreneurship. And when you're in YC, it's basically this, Y Combinator, it's this intense sprint, right? You're just supposed to sprint and make as much progress as possible and focus on nothing but your startup. And they tell you, they say, you know, part of being successful is learning what to say no to, right? And so they say, we're going to give you a very simple guideline. If you want to know if you're doing the right thing in this program, ask yourself if you're doing one of these 3 things. Are you building your product, meaning coding or building your hardware product? Are you talking to users or customers? Or are you exercising, right? So even in this 3-month period where you're supposed to be doing nothing but work on your startup, he says it's important to make time to exercise, and it's absolutely true. I could have thrown up a ton of studies that show how exercise also brings down cortisol levels, but that's been sort of known science since the 50s. Then there's passion. So this is a quote from Steve Jobs. If you're not passionate enough from the start, you'll never stick it out. And essentially, you should find a problem that you really care about, right? Because it will be incredibly difficult. And if it's not something that you actually want to see happen, it's just not going to be worth it. You're either going to give up, or you're going to wonder constantly, like, why am I doing this, right? Even for an entrepreneur who has passion, when it's really tough, they at least know why they're doing it. So find something that maybe you've been personally frustrated with for a while, and dedicate your life to that. Then there's purpose. This is actually a quote from mine, just made this up. But purpose is essentially a sort of higher level meaning. And I think this is probably the most important thing that you should find in your career, right? So for me, I told you the story about, you know, my mother. So for me, my purpose is to sort of be a proxy for people who can't advocate for themselves, right? So that's led me into the nonprofit world, that's led me into politics, it's led me to Amicus. Like, I love helping people do what they want to do, and that's sort of my purpose in life. And so when things are really, really tough, it's easy for me to continue, or easier, because I feel like there's this importance to what I'm doing. So if you don't know right now what the importance is to what you're doing, if someone says, why is what you're doing really important? If you can't answer that, then you should maybe think about if you're doing the right thing.
So when we know that, there are struggles to being a leader, and there are struggles to being an entrepreneur, and there are ways of managing the stress, and you're doing all that, but still something doesn't seem right. I think an important lesson to remember here is it's okay to give up. Sometimes it's okay to walk away. It takes courage to say that, and it takes courage to do that. But sometimes we find ourselves on the path of doing something because some pretty random circumstances led us there. And then we continue doing because we've been building up that momentum in that one direction. But if you keep doing everything right, if you manage your stress right, if you're learning, if you're learning your leadership skills, if everything is okay, but you're still not, you feel like you're burning out, maybe it's maybe on the back of your head, you just know that it's not what you should be doing, or maybe the initial purpose and the passion was maybe not so true. For me, the biggest struggle, and why I'm saying that is, first of all, right now I work with a bunch of startups as an investor too, and it's just so people get really stressed up and locked in their small universes of, oh my God, there's this, and like you don't understand, because it's a very lonely experience to be a leader and an entrepreneur to begin with, because people really don't understand what's in your head, and neither they can, because it's your personal experience. But quite often I would think it's still okay to have to put yourself through that struggle and push forward and do all those things right. And if you know you're doing something really important, but very often very smart people put themselves on the wrong path, and they just keep accelerating until they hit a wall that's bigger than they ever expected. So it's not to say that you should be constantly questioning if you should be doing that because you're going to drive yourself mad. But if you're doing everything else wrong, right, and it doesn't feel right, maybe you should just stop and reconsider what you want to do with your life, what you want to do with your time. Because as Jerry, the coach that I mentioned, said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You have an entire lifetime. You should optimize for your brain power, for your impact, for your creativity, for your happiness, for many important factors. You should but you have to remember you have all that time. Maybe one step will lead to another. And there is a book that I recommend to people, and I recommended it to 20 or 30 people this year, and it's not very long, and so mostly people read it and they come to me with feedback. And it's a great book of kind of a Buddhist perspective to dealing with change. It's called When Things Fall Apart. It's not just for things totally falling apart. You can probably read it when you graduate school, because then your university kind of falls apart because you can no longer hold on to that part of identity as a student. So it's for any important life changes when you have to reposition yourself, but when you're not ready for it. So
and
that's and then you just start again, you reiterate, you put yourself in a maybe better track, you try to climb a bigger mountain and get yourself ready to climb the highest mountains you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
So,
and in a nutshell, that's how you eat glass.
Yep. That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you.